Right friends, welcome back to editorial discussion. And one thing I would like to tell you, some of the students are raising some doubts every day after the editorial discussion, and shortly we will devise some mechanism to answer your queries, whether next day or once in a week. That mechanism we will devise. Probably we will try to implement it from April onwards. So, today we are going to deliberate on around 6-7 issues, and the first one is with regard to the National Health Policy 2017, and this is the news item. This does not have any analysis, only factual information is presented today, and the analysis part will take place shortly next week as and when we get lot of news reports on this. So, yesterday the Union Health Minister announced this National Health Policy 2017. In fact, the previous health policy pertains to 2002. So, after 15 years, National Health Policy was announced. Here, one important aspect is it falls short of health to become fundamental right. Some of the sections of society argued that in the new health policy, health should become fundamental right, but it has fallen short of it, but it promises increasing the public expenditure on health to 2.5% of GDP in in a time bound manner. So, this is one important thing with regard to this national health policy. If you look at other aspects, there are certain aspects for reducing this indicators like infant mortality rate, then under 5 mortality rate or child mortality rate, maternal mortality ratio, and neonatal mortality rate, stillbirth rate. So, these things are scheduled to be reduced by 2019, 20, 25 like that. So, this is one important aspect of this health policy, and research on tribal medicines, this is one more important aspect, and increasing the life expectancy to 70 years from 67.5 years at present, and setting up of tribunals for redressal of grievances. So, these are important aspects of this health policy, and I am not going into the analysis part, but before concluding this, let us look at some definitions. These are important because quite often next week when we further deliberate on this health policy, these terms quite frequently you come across, because government wants to reduce these ratios or rates gradually by 2025. And what is the stillbirth, what is under 5 mortality or child mortality, these definitions very important. Stillbirth is a baby who is born without any signs of life at or after 28 weeks of gestation. So, gestation period of humans is 40 weeks, around 40 weeks, and if a baby is born after 28 weeks of gestation without any signs of life, that is designated as a stillbirth. This under 5 mortality, other name is child mortality. Child mortality is probability of dying between birth and before attaining 5 years of age, and this is expressed as 1000 per 1000 live births. So, this is child mortality rate, the other one is infant mortality rate. If the same happens before attaining 1 year of age, this is infant mortality. Then maternal mortality ratio is pertaining to the mother, death of a woman while pregnant or within 42 days of termination of pregnancy, then it is calculated per 1 lakh births. So, here 42 days of termination of pregnancy is also the time. If something happens to the woman or mother, then it comes under maternal mortality ratio, and another sign is neonatal mortality rate or NMR. NMR is death of a child during the first 28 days of life is neonatal. So, neonatal, then at the same time infant, at the same time child or under 5 mortality rates, at the same time the definition of stillbirth, the definition of maternal mortality ratio for mothers. So, these definitions and the understanding of these terms is very much important when we discuss analysis of this health policy next week, right. We will discuss next week, or we will present as a separate capsule indicating all pros and cons of this health policy. Probably we will discuss next week. Next one is return to normal. This is talking about monetary policy of Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is a central bank of United States of America. We have Reserve Bank of India. Similarly, Federal Reserve is the central bank of United States of America. And monetary policy. What is monetary policy? Monetary policy basically controls the circulation of money in the system. Basically, the monetary policy's role is to control circulation of money in the system. If more money is there in the system, in countries like India, it may lead to inflation. If the money is not sufficient in circulation, then it may affect growth. So, central banks have to strike a balance between growth as well as inflation in developing countries. But the dynamics of developed countries is something different. So, here what is meant by monetary policy, that is controlling money circulation is monetary policy, and the other one is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the prerogative of the Ministry of Finance. Monetary policy is the prerogative of Reserve Bank of India or central banks as a whole. And if you look at monetary policy, basically it is controlling these ratios, cash reserve ratio, then statutory liquidity ratio. These ratios are controlled. So, by controlling these ratios, money circulation is controlled in the banking system. At the same time, these interest rates, policy rates are nothing but interest rates. Reserve Bank of India announces repo rate. Repo rate is the rate which gives a signal to the market as far as interest rates are concerned, and remaining 3 interest rates are linked to repo rate. At the same time, open market operations is buying and selling of bonds. If bonds are purchased from the market, then more money will be there in the circulation. If bonds are sold in the market, then less money will be available in the market. So, basically all these tools are to control money circulation in the market, right. Having learned this, 2 important points from preliminary examination perspective, please do not forget. The first one is the major change in 2016 is with regard to constitution of monetary policy committee in our country. Previously, Reserve Bank of India governor has got veto power and ultimate authority was Reserve Bank of India governor. Now, monetary policy committee came into existence in 2016. Now, the decisions are taken by the 6-member committee. 6-member committee, 3 members are internal members of Reserve Bank of India, 3 members are external members. So, total the committee constitutes 6 members. So, the 6-member committee will decide the monetary policy nowadays, and if there is a tie 3+3, then Reserve Bank of India governor will exercise the deciding vote, that is different. So, here 6-member monetary policy committee is in vogue at present. This is one important change in 2016, and the other important change is with regard to the inflation target. Government has given inflation target to Reserve Bank of India. Please maintain this much inflation. What is the target given? That is 4% plus or minus 2%. So, 4% plus or minus 2% is the inflation target given by the government to Reserve Bank of India, and Reserve Bank of India has to ensure inflation within 2% to 6% or 4% plus or minus 2%, and if they are not able to adhere to that, then they have to give the explanation to the government. So, this is second change. Then the third change is, change you cannot say, third important information is this inflation is a consumer price based inflation, that means CPI base, right. So, these things please do not forget, and this inflation target given by the central government to Reserve Bank of India is valid till March 2021. This point also please do not forget. So, this is with regard to India's monetary policy and important changes in 2016. These are very much important when you look at the preliminary examination or any other high end examinations. Now, let us look at the monetary policy of United States of America, and meeting of Federal Open Market Committee occurs once in 7 weeks. So, in United States of America, there is a Federal Reserve sits 8 times in a year, and in our country Reserve Bank of India monetary policy is 6 times in a year. So, once in 2 months. So, in USA 8 times in a year, and salient points are federal funds rate is increased slightly and is now stands at 0.75% to 1%. As we talk about our monetary policy, in our monetary policy, repo rate has got a lot of significance with regard to the interbank call money market. Similarly, here federal funds rate as decided by Reserve Bank, as decided by Federal Reserve in USA, will have similar impact on the federal funds effective rate. So, when one bank is borrowing from another bank, the interest rates between these two banks for 1 or 2 days, or you can say overnight lending, is basically depends on the federal funds rate as decided by Federal Reserve. So, now it increased slightly, now they stand at 0.75 to 1%. In future, there is expected to be further increases, maybe 2 times during this year. So, gradually the interest rates are being increased, and now inflation is at the target range of around 2%. So, the fundamental difference with regard to inflation is developing countries suffer because of high inflation, developed countries suffer because not having inflation. Both are dangerous. Not having inflation is also dangerous, having inflation is also dangerous. So, developing countries suffer because of having more inflation, whereas developed countries suffer not having inflation, because of not having inflation, right. So, here now federal funds rate is being increased slightly. So, these are central banks of advanced countries. Some examples I have given, and what they are doing. Please have a look at what these banks are doing till now. What they are doing is they are resorting to easy money policies. The theory behind it is, when more and more money is available with the public, with the financial institutions, then it will result in GDP growth. At the same time, it may also result in the increased inflation up to the range of 2%. So, this is the perception of easy money policies. Now, Federal Reserve is slightly coming out of this easy money policy. When interest rates are increased, then easy money policy will be automatically reduced. So, easy money availability will be reduced when interest rates are increased. What so far these banks are doing? These banks are doing keeping benchmark interest rates at 0 or near 0 levels, and some central banks are resorting to negative interest rates. When central bank is saying negative interest rate, that means the commercial banks, if they have excess money, when they are parking it with central bank, they have to pay to central bank. So, this is negative interest rate policy. Because of this policy, what will happen? Banks will be forced to go for lending. It may have its adverse circumstances, that is different story. So, these are the easy money policies being adopted by the central banks world over. Some are resorting to massive bond buying programs. One example is the quantitative easing, which was adopted by Federal Reserve some time back. So, some are resorting to massive bond buying programs because when bonds are purchased, then more money will be there in the system. Some even talking of helicopter money. What is helicopter money? This is basically reducing the debt by printing currency. So, demonetization of debt by printing currency is helicopter money. Please understand from examination perspective. So, demonetization of debt by printing currency is a helicopter money. Some of the central banks are resorting to helicopter money also. So, now the step of Federal Reserve is slightly away from easy money policy, right. So, let us leave this discussion here. Let us go ahead. The next one is missing the spirit of for the body. This article basically talks about freedom. So, before going ahead, there is a censor board. Censor board is basically Central Board of Film Certification. Central Board of Film Certification is under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and it is a statutory body. Please understand, Central Board of Film Certification is a statutory body. It is under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and it is basically regulation of public exhibition of the provisions under the Cinematograph Act of 1952. So, all the films, music videos, documentaries meant for public exhibition, irrespective of their length, in whatever the form, they are regulated by Central Board of Film Certification. At present, films are categorized in 4 categories. The categories I have given here: U, UA, A, S. So, 4 categories films are certified, and sometimes it also does not give certification. That means it will ban particular film, and if at all it is certified, it gives films with 4 types of categorization. All of you are familiar with the U, UA, A category films. So, like that, total categories are 4, right. So, this is about censor board or Central Board of Film Certification, and some time back Shyam Benegal committee was appointed basically to ensure reforms in censor board. Shyam Benegal committee some time back suggested, instead of scissoring the films, it should assign them different classifications like suitable for 12 years of age or adults only, like that it recommended. But nothing happened, that is different story, and Shyam Benegal committee some time back suggested some changes. So, leave this discussion here. Now, the present issue is with regard to not clearing the film car bodyscapes, and censor board objected to it. In fact, censor board objected to it, stating that it glorified the subject of gay and homosexual relationships. It glorified this subject, that is why censor board objected to it. Censor board also felt that some of the scenes offend Hindu sensibilities, depicting vulgarity and obscenity through the movie. Then at the same time, censor board also felt that it may become law and order problem if the film is cleared. So, there was issue going on with regard to these 2 films recently. This is Ka Bodyscapes, and this is director Jayan Cherian, and then Alankrita Srivastava film, Lipstick Wale Sapne. So, this is another film. In fact, censor board has not cleared these 2 films, and both these films are banned, and these films, they show female sexual desires and also validates lesbian, gay, bisexual identities, and they unquestioningly accepts an individual's right to self-determination. The basic theme of these 2 films is individual's right to self-determination. Now, wider debate is going on. Some sections of society says culture of our country is very important and paramount, and other sections of society says that individuals should have freedom the way they want to live. So, there is a lot of heated debate going on with regard to these 2 fundamental aspects in our country, and the author says that self-determination and the right to self-expression must be paramount. So, I am leaving this discussion here. So, there are two aspects in such type of discussions. One is the aspect pertaining to culture of our country. The second one pertains to self-determination, and that aspect primarily looks at the freedom to live in their own way. So, on what way you are, please decide, and wider debate on such issues is going on in our country. I am leaving this discussion here. Look at the next one, leaving no one behind. This issue is with regard to persons with disabilities. Now, Niti Aayog is looking at how to achieve the sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals, there are I think 17 goals and I think 169 or so targets. So, to achieve these things, now Niti Aayog is developing how to monitor these goals, and here the author argues that the persons with disabilities must not be left behind, and to take care of the needs and needs and rights of persons with disabilities, they should be included in the framework which is being devised by Niti Aayog, which is going to be adopted till 2030. So, before going ahead, the author says that there is a convention on the rights of persons with disabilities. There is one convention, United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which came into force in May 2008. India is also a signatory. Basically, convention is monitored by Committee on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and as per this convention, there are 8 guiding principles. There are 8 guiding principles, basically dignity, individual autonomy, freedom to make one's own choices, non-discrimination, and effective participation and inclusion in society for physically challenged people. So, right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. Like that, there are 8 principles for the convention. So, based on these principles, India also adopted Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. We deliberated a few days ago, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. This was passed and last year, and types of disabilities also increased from 7 to 21, and central government has got the power to add more types of disabilities. And at the same time, Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, this is another program of government, basically to make accessible various public buildings. There should not be any discrimination when somebody is entering a railway station or bus stand or an office. So, to make all these buildings disabled people friendly, this Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan is intended. Then at the same time, what about the impaired people, impaired vision? That is Sugamya Pustakalaya. This is the largest online library for blind and print disabled. And at the same time, we discussed about Marrakesh VIP Treaty. This came into force last year, September 30. This is Visually Impaired Persons Treaty or Marrakesh VIP Treaty. So, this treaty basically talks about making available all types of readable material to the visually impaired persons. India is the first one to ratify this treaty, please do not forget. And now, after learning about these 4 things, now important aspects from this article. Important aspects are, persons with disabilities must be seen as integral to the decision making process, and these must be in tune with United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So, while looking at all the sustainable development goals, 17 goals by 2030, and in the framework which is going to be prepared by Niti Aayog, all the aspects pertaining to physically disabled people must be taken note of. That is the crux of the matter, and not only one particular Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, it must involve 26 ministries, because it is not the lookout of single ministry. 26 ministries are to be involved while framing all these aspects, right. So, here there are more than 85 targets across 15 goals encompassing more than 100 indicators, and all must be having provision for collecting, analyzing, disaggregating and reporting data for persons with disabilities. So, the author strongly feels that in all types of monitoring tools, whether the sustainable development tools are properly implemented or not, for all types of monitoring them, the column for persons with disabilities must be inbuilt by Niti Aayog. This is a valid suggestion, and let us move on. Are injectable contraceptives advisable? This debate, there are three views: positive view by government official, negative view by some activist, and third view basically talks about why only women, why there is a lot of bias in using contraceptives, why can't the men take responsibility. So, this is third view we are going to look at, and before looking at this Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, this looks at National Family Planning Program. National Family Planning Program, in fact, India is the first country in the world to launch National Program for Family Planning in 1952. In 1952, India launched National Program for Family Planning, and this is basically towards nowadays achieving welfare goals as per National Population Policy 2000, National Health Policy 2002, we just now discussed. National Health Policy 2017 was announced yesterday. So, at present National Health Policy 2002 is in vogue. So, it should conform to these policies. So, please do not forget, this National Family Health Planning Program was launched as early as 1952 in our country. So, here family planning basically revolves around two things. One is the spacing methods. The first child after marriage, for first child how much gap must be there, and after first child the gap between first child and second child. So, this is a spacing method. The second one is limiting method. So, it is basically sterilization. So, these two are basically family planning methods, and here IUCD. So, this is intrauterine contraceptive device, then oral contraceptive pills as well as condoms. So, these three are basically used for spacing methods. And if you look at sterilization, finally, women, laparoscopy for women and vasectomy for men. But the important point to note is, for men the vasectomies are insignificant in number, and primarily the sterilization part is looked after by women because of several myths associated with vasectomy. And after learning about spacing methods and limiting methods, now let us look at government is introducing injectable contraceptive. And in fact, in 2015 government introduced three types of contraceptives. Now, this is injectable contraceptive, the name is DMPA. So, from preliminary examination point of view also, this is important, please do not forget this dipomedroxyprogesterone acetate or DMPA. So, this is injectable contraceptive, government is going to introduce it. There is a lot of debate going on this. So, here we are going to look at positive aspects first. This is basically to expand the basket of choices for the persons. Already we have this IUCD, then oral contraceptive pills, and this DMPA, this is Depo-Provera contraceptive injection. So, this contraceptive injection is basically to expand the basket of choices. Then it is access to preferred contraceptive methods must be there to the people in our country. So, access must be given to preferred contraceptive methods, and who and professional bodies advocated the use of this injectable contraceptive. And there were some news reports that bone marrow density will be reduced because of use of this, but government officials says bone marrow density is irreversible and no fear of lessening bone density. And here the important point is whether our people, or you can say in rural areas, auxiliary nurse midwives or ANMs are properly educated to use this contraceptive or not. That is the biggest question. Then the government says they will be introduced in a phased manner. Let us look at the negative view. The negative view is adverse effects on human health. Then this, instead of this contraceptives, government must look at social development and improving public services. The view of the persons who does not want this injectable contraceptive. Then government not yet prepared to implement this. This may be true to some extent because auxiliary nurse midwives, they may not be properly educated because of this, and now the government says they will be implemented at present in government hospitals only. Even the government document maintains side effects like menstrual cycle changes, excessive bleeding, etc. So, these things are pointed out in the government document itself as side effects, and at the same time HIV infections will increase with the use of this injection. There are no proper information about IUCDs in rural areas. This intrauterine contraceptive devices, in fact their use is also not properly known in rural areas. Under these circumstances, what is the point in implementing another thing which is this contraceptive injection, right? Then the other view is, we should not look at it from that perspective. We need to stop referring to family and sexual reproductive health and rights as only women issues. What about men? Gender bias must be corrected, men's participation must be increased. As per National Family Health Survey in 2005, 1% of men were opting for sterilization. Just 1% of men opting for sterilization, and within 10 years even that has gone down to 0.3%. Now we need more doctors trained in vasectomy, and men's participation will improve maternal and child health indicators. So, this argues, why not involve men? Why you are talking about women always? So, please involve men, and if men are involved in the issues, then maternal and child health indicators will improve. So, full preparedness for its implementation must be the key, right? We leave this discussion here. As and when some more information comes, we will go for one special capsule on this. Then the next one is an unedited mutation. This is basically about gene editing. From preliminary examination perspective, this is very important. Gene editing technique. Recently, there was some intellectual property dispute in gene editing. Recently, this CRISPR is into the news. CRISPR means clustered regulatory interspaced short palindromic repeats. This is gene editing technology. Cas9 is enzyme. Enzymes are used basically to cut DNA. Here, what is this technology? This DNA is nothing but deoxyribonucleic acid. It is a material inside the nucleus of cells carrying genetic information. Inside the nucleus, this DNA will be there. So, this carries genetic information, and this is deoxyribonucleic acid. So, if some disease is invented, or you can say if some disease is because of some problem in DNA, if some disease is because of some problem in DNA, that particular portion will be cut. So, this is cut by some enzyme. So, here this CAS9 is the enzyme. So, here certain enzymes can cut pieces of DNA from one organism. So, all about CRISPR is, this is a gene editing technology. It is basically altering DNAs. So, this altering DNAs is done by the enzymes. This Cas9 is one such enzyme. So, this is all about CRISPR. This is all about this CRISPR technology. This is a gene editing, and some intellectual battle or intellectual property right battle is going on in regard to this. Then, as per the article, a team in China corrected genetic mutations in a few cells in normal human embryos, right. So, previous attempts were done in abnormal human embryos, but the present experiment is with regard to normal human embryos. So, in this study, normal embryos were corrected by tweaking the deleterious mutations, right. And now, important aspects is, with a genetic basis for certain diseases, is it morally compelling for a couple to terminate a fetus? If some disease is found in the fetus, is it morally right thing to terminate a fetus? And at the same time, CRISPR attempts to correct certain genes can sometimes lead to other genes may also be affected. Now, intellectual property battle is going on. At the same time, several commercial interests and lobbying may take place in future. So, this important article throws some light about the future which will be there for gene editing technique, right. Then the last one is the governor's options. This is with regard to Goa. Here, out of 40 assembly seats, Congress got 17 seats if I am not wrong, BJP got 13 seats, but BJP staked to form the government, Congress not staked its claim to form the government, BJP staked claim to form the government with the support of some parties. And as far as this issue is concerned, when no party gets absolute majority, the constitution is vacuum in this aspect, and some conventions are there. The convention of inviting single largest party in case of fractured mandate has been outlined by Sarkaria Commission. Sarkaria Commission on center-state relations stated that the first one is single largest party in case of fractured mandate, that is to be called. It was affirmed by a constitutional bench of Supreme Court also in Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India in 2005. So, now as per salient features of Sarkaria Commission report, the governor must follow the following order of preference 1, 2, 3, 4. And in this particular case, of course, Congress has not staked its claim to form the government, and immediately after the elections, BJP has produced the letters with the support of some parties. Overall, the process is outlined here. Please go through these 4 points. The order of preference is given, but overall, the Sarkaria Commission concluded that the governor should select a leader. The governor should select a leader in his or her judgment is most likely to command a majority in the assembly. So, if you look at the wholesome perspective of Goa incident, what the governor has done probably is the right thing of inviting Manohar Parrikar as the chief minister of Goa, right. So, here final conclusion as per Sarkaria Commission is, governor should select a leader who in his or her judgment is most likely to command a majority in the assembly. Right friends, today we conclude here and we join once again on Monday at 11 AM, and today we will produce 3 capsules for 10th week, 1 maternity benefit bill, all pros and cons, and 2 more capsules. Please do join for live at 12 o'clock noon today, and at the same time this editorial discussion will continue again on Monday at 11 a.m. Have a nice day. Thank you.